Hello, I'm Victoria Carthew and I look forward to sharing your English, mathematics and science lessons today. Coming up, we will explore what context is and how it impacts on writing. We will also explore some amazing strategies we can use to multiply values together so that we get the correct answer every time. And we will discuss some of the projects Australia is leading to help other communities. It's time to get comfortable, open your minds to learn something new. Have you ever read or listened to a text and felt that you have been transported to another time and place? Authors use language choices to convey details or information about context to help their audience connect with characters and understand the challenges and experiences these characters have. Let's hear how authors use these language choices to convey the social, historical and cultural context of their text.
Hi everyone, I'm Chris. I really enjoy it when I read a story and I feel like I understand the character's life and what it must be like to be like them, when I can almost imagine walking in their footsteps, experiencing what they experience. Today we're going to look at how authors use language choices to convey details or information about the social, historical and cultural context of a text, helping engage the reader. But first, what do you already know about context? When we talk about context, we mean an environment in which a text is responded to or created. Context refers to the time, place, people, and relationships of a text. Authors use language choices to establish the social, historical, and cultural context of what we read. Do you know what the difference is between these different types of contexts? The social context is the situation in which the text is written, who the author and characters are, and the relationships and interactions between them. The historical context is the time and place in which the text is written. The cultural context refers to the cultural values, beliefs, and events in the text. How about we take a close look at how these different types of contexts are conveyed in a text by looking at an example. Here is an extract of a journal entry. It has been written with a particular social, historical, and cultural context. Let's read it together. Dear Journal, the rain falling softly outside reminds me of London. The land really needs a soaking as it has been so dry for so long. I occasionally become so very homesick for London, but Nathan is determined to make a go at this dairy farm. Nathan bought me a gleaming new refrigerator during this last visit to Brisbane. I'm the first person in the town to have one. There is no greater luxury in this sweltering Queensland heat. I no longer need to keep my meat in the meat safe and our milk and cheese in the icebox. This weekend, we will attend the Anzac Dawn service. All the families of the surrounding properties will be there, and afterwards, we will gather together at the community hall. The author of this journal entry has used particular language choices to convey details or information about the social, historical, and cultural context of the text. Let's take a closer look at the text and consider each of these contexts in turn. Which context should we choose to consider first? How about the social context? Do you remember what the social context is? That's right. The social context is the situation in which the text is written, who the author and characters are, and the relationships and interactions between them. How does the journal entry provide information about the author? Can you find any examples? That's right. The journal entry states, "The rain falling softly reminds me of London." And it also says that the author is homesick, which helps us to understand that the author is from London. The fact that they are homesick suggests that the author is not necessarily happy living in their new home. We understand the social context of a text when it uses language to convey information about the relationships and interactions between people. Can you find any examples of this in the text? That's right. The journal entry includes information about Nathan. Nathan is determined to make a go of this farm, and also that he bought a new refrigerator. Through this information, we understand that the author and Nathan must have a close relationship. There are also references to other groups in the text. Can you find them? That's right. Look at the last few lines. The text here says that all families of the surrounding properties will gather at the community hall. This conveys the social context that the author interacts with other members of the community. There are also some clues in the text about historical context. Can you remember what historical context is? It is the time and place in which the text is written. What language choices can you find that give us an indication that the text is situated within a different historical period? That's right. There are a few examples in the second paragraph. The author writes, "I'm the first person in town to have a new refrigerator." There are also some vocabulary choices like the noun groups meat safe and icebox that show that this text was written in the past, most likely sometime between the 1920s and 1950s or 60s. The text also includes sentences about the place, the weather and how welcome the rain is since it has been dry for so long. It also includes the noun group sweltering Queensland. Both these references give information about the environment at the time the journal was written. So far, we have considered how the author uses language to convey information about the social and historical context of the text. But there's one more context that we are going to consider today. Can you remember what it is? If you remembered cultural context, well done. I wonder what we could find out about the cultural context if we look more closely at the language choices. Do you remember what cultural context means? The cultural context refers to the cultural values, beliefs, and events in the text. Can you find any references for important cultural values, beliefs, or events? That's right. If we look at the last paragraph, we see that the author mentions attending the Anzac Dawn service and gathering at the community hall after. This provides useful information because it lets the audience know commemorating the lives of Australians who died at war was a significant cultural event that was observed as a community. Authors use language choices to establish the social context, historical context, and cultural context. When you were reading our journal entry, could you imagine what life was like for that author? The language choices that authors make help us imagine the worlds in which the characters we are reading about live in. This helps us understand characters' experiences and connects us to what we are reading. Today, why don't you write a journal entry? In your journal entry, think about some words or phrases that you could include that would help someone from the future understand your social, historical, and cultural context. See you next time. Bye.
The My Place competition is back for 2020. This year, the Australian Children's Television Foundation and the Australian Literacy Educators Association are calling on students in years 3 to 10 to create stories about your place in this historically significant time. The coronavirus pandemic has reshaped our lives, and historians of the future will want to know how this looked and felt for you, your family, and your community. The 2020 My Place competition asks you to reflect on this moment in time and share your thoughts, observations and experiences through creative writing. Entries can be uploaded until the 26th of June.
I am the magician!
I'm not weird.
You're gonna get in so much trouble.
Okay, I hope that you're feeling maths ready because it's now time to apply multiplication strategies. Do you know people who can do multiplication in their head with really big numbers? Have you ever wondered how they do that? It must be a useful skill in today's world where, unfortunately, sometimes technology does fail us. Here's Linda to show us the way.
Multiplying is an important mathematical skill to have. We have to multiply in our everyday lives, whether we're cooking, building something, or working out how many days until our birthday. However, there are different ways that mathematicians can multiply numbers. We're going to explore some of these ways today and find out which one suits us. The first cool strategy we're going to use today is the area model for multiplying. We have previously looked at multiplying using the area model, so let's recap briefly. The area model is a great way to visualise operations. We can use grid paper or a diagram to draw out the operation. So, for example, let's say we need to multiply 14 by 6. The outlined area is 14 grid squares long and 6 grid squares deep. Each section shows the place value multiplied by 6. So this section on the first box shows 10 by 6, and this section shows 4 by 6 on the right box. So we have 60 plus 24 equals 84. So 14 multiplied by 6 equals 84. Let's try another strategy to multiply larger numbers. Have you used the split strategy before? If we want to multiply 2,347 by 5, we can split the number to solve the expression. Firstly, we split the number into its place value parts vertically on our page. So we end up with 2,347 written down our page like this. Next, we multiply each of those by 5 and write the answers in. So we know 2,000 times 5 equals 10,000 and 300 times 5 equals 1,500. We also know 40 by 5 equals 200 and lastly 7 by 5 is 35. Finally, we add those values together to get our final answer. So 10,000 plus 1,500 plus 200 plus 35 is equal to 11,735. Let's try another example. How about 6,432 multiplied by 8? Firstly, we'll split the value into 6,430 and 2. Then we'll multiply each of those by 8. So 6,000 multiplied by 8 is 48,000, and 400 multiplied by 8 is 3,200. 30 multiplied by 8 is 240, and lastly 2 multiplied by 8 is 16. Finally, we need to add them together. Add 48,000 to 3,200 to 240 to 16. We reach our final answer of 51,456. The final strategy we're going to explore today is the compensate strategy. In this strategy, we round one of the numbers to a benchmark number and then compensate by adding or subtracting the rounded difference. When we work with numbers in the thousands, we must make sure that we are rounding to the closest 100. For example, if our number was 6,117, we would round down to 6,100. But if our number was 6,190, we would need to round up to 6,200. Have you used the compensate strategy before? Let's have a look at an example together. Let's multiply 3,995 by 3. So our first step is to round 3,995 to the closest 100, which in this case is rounding up to 4,000. So 4,000 is our benchmark. Now, when we're using this strategy, we have to remember the difference between our original value and the benchmark value. So in this example, the difference between 3,995 and 4,000 is 5. Then we multiply 4,000 by 3. This will give us 12,000. And now we need to compensate because there was a difference of 5 between our benchmark value and our original value. So remember, we also multiplied by 3. Now we have to subtract 3 lots of 5, so we would subtract 15 from 12,000. This gives us our final answer of 11,985. Let's try another one, just to be sure you've got it. If we wanted to multiply 2,507 by 5, we would have to round down to the closest 100, which would be 2,500. This would be our benchmark value. Now, how much do you think we would have to compensate by? Well, there's a difference of 7. We need to compensate by adding the 5 extra lots of 7. So the final answer would be 12,535. Now that we've learned 3 strategies to multiply, let's put them to the test and make sure they provide the same answer. I'm going to make some strawberry ice blocks for a school fete, and we need to make sure there are 230 ice blocks for sale. Each ice block requires 7 strawberries. So how many strawberries do we need in total? If we use the area strategy, we can split 230 into place values across the top, and we place the 7 on the vertical side of the grid. We then multiply 7 by 200 to give us 1,400, and then multiply 7 by 30, which gives us 210. To get the final answer, we need to add those together, giving us 1,610. Now, for the split strategy, we split 230 into 230, write them vertically down the page. We then multiply each of those by 7 and add the results together. And you can see this gives us 1,610 again. For the compensate strategy, 230 is not far off 200. So we multiply 200 by 7, which is 1,400. Now we have to compensate by adding 7 extra lots of 30. Now we'll add the 210 to 1,400, and that gives us the final answer of 1,610. So we can see that each different multiplication strategy ends up with the same final answer. Okay, let's recap what we've learned today. We now know that we can solve multiplication operations using the area model, split strategy, or compensate strategy. And even though there are different ways to carry out operations like multiplication, they all result in the same answer. Later on, you might like to try each of these strategies to find which one most suits you. Or you could practice multiplying some double-digit values by single digits and then build up to eventually be multiplying 4-digit values by 2-digit values. And then you'll have some strategies to confidently tackle even the most tricky multiplication challenge using your favourite strategy.
Hello. Today we're going to talk about summarising. When we summarise, we take the most important parts of a text and express them in a shorter way. So why is summarising important? Have you ever had to read a long text and then tried to remember what it's about? Good readers summarise a text to remember the key points. One way to summarise is to pause during your reading and make a note in your head of the main ideas in the text. You could write them in a summary square. To make a summary square, you need to take a piece of square paper and fold it into 4. Open out your paper and fold each corner into the middle. Like so. Number each point 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1 might be a key point from the introduction of the text. 2 could be a key point from the middle, and so on. Maybe you could try making your own summary square. Happy reading!
Did you know that 1 in 10 people across the world don't have access to electricity? Can you imagine not having an easy and reliable electricity supply? I can't. Think about how useful it is for our learning and for preparing our food. Countries around the world are talking about how electricity can be supplied to the communities that can't plug in easily, like we can. And we're going to discuss some of the projects Australia is leading to help these communities. Here's Brett with more.
G'day. Take a look at these 2 lights. One is a lamp, like we might have on our desk, and the other is a set of solar lights that we might have outside the house for a birthday or for Christmas. Now, both of them use electricity moving in circuits to power the bulbs, but I wonder where the electricity comes from. What's your prediction? Why do you think that? Remember those ideas because we're going to come back to them in a minute. Electricity can be generated from a variety of energy sources: coal, wind, and of course, the sun. We can classify and talk about energy sources as renewable and non-renewable. Recall that a renewable energy source is one that is being produced, grown or replaced over time at a rate that is faster than it's being used. Examples of that are wind and solar and hydro energy, the energy of moving water. A non-renewable energy source takes a very long time to be created, in fact, millions of years, which means it is being used more quickly than it's being replaced. These are our fossil fuels: coal, oil and natural gas. In Australia, about 85% of our electricity is generated from fossil fuel sources. So, back to our lights. This light has a plug, so it connects to a power point. It uses electricity generated by a power station that is transported to our homes. About 15% of electricity in Australia is generated from wind, solar and hydro sources. So let's go back to our fairy lights. They have a solar panel and generate electricity from the sun, stored and released as needed. So it uses solar energy. Today, we are going to explore some innovative ways of using solar energy to generate electricity. Now, in Australia, we're lucky. If we want to use electricity, we just flick a switch and bingo, we have electricity. But there are over 1 billion people across the world who can't access safe and reliable electricity at home because their homes are not connected to the town's electricity supply. This can be called energy poverty. So where could they get their electricity from? Australians are coming up with innovative, cost-effective ways of using renewable energy sources to provide electricity for these communities. Let's look at 2 examples. In some communities where houses don't have access to electricity, people use kerosene lanterns to provide lighting. But this lighting is weak, and burning kerosene can have an effect on our lungs, making it harder to breathe. One Australian business provides solar lights to people living in these less developed cities in India. These are very highly populated areas where living conditions are poor and people don't have access to electricity, even for lights. This Australian-led project provides families with portable solar lights at an affordable cost and has been very successful. More than 15,000 solar systems have been installed, reaching more than 70,000 people in over 900 communities, saving the burning of more than 2 million litres of kerosene. Compared to the kerosene lanterns, the solar lights provide a safe and reliable light for families to study and cook by. The solar panels can also collect enough energy from the sun to, well, charge a mobile phone. Closer to home, in parts of Indonesia and Papua New Guinea, it's common for people to have to travel many hours to access electricity to charge their mobile phones, and they spend large portions of their income on kerosene, small batteries and candles to provide lights for their homes. A second business, located in Queensland, has taken a slightly different approach to providing solar-powered electricity for these communities in Papua New Guinea and Indonesia. They've designed a small energy supply system powered by solar energy hooked up to batteries so the energy can be stored. The system is centrally located in the village for all the villagers to use, and it's able to charge up to 50 small electronic devices and torches. There's also enough energy left over to power a light big enough to light an entire communal space for 5 hours each evening. So people can come together and connect with each other. Now, we know that the energy source is renewable. More solar energy can be generated quickly, but are these solutions sustainable? To decide this, we need to think about a few more questions. Can it be used for a long time? What are the impacts on the environment? Are there impacts on people's health? Is it affordable? How does it benefit the community? Based on these, we can conclude these are sustainable ways to provide some communities around the world with access to electricity. Okay, let's recap what we've learned today. We know that fossil fuels, wind, solar and hydro are the most common sources of energy use to generate electricity in Australia. Australians are leading innovative projects in the use of renewable energy sources to provide electricity to communities in developing countries. And to explore the sustainability of a solution, we need to consider other aspects like the cost and impacts on people and the environment. And now it is over to you. You could think about the role electricity plays in your life. How many things would you need to do differently if you didn't have electricity? Or if you could only use lights or the microwave for 2 hours every night? And you could research other inventions by Australians. Thanks for watching and see you next time.
I found that fascinating and I hope you did too. It's wonderful to see Australians being so inventive. Well, that's it for Learning at Home TV today, but we'll be back with more lessons very soon. In the meantime, stay safe and positive, make sure you look out for each other, and remember that it's important to make exercise a part of every day. See you next time.
Authorised by the Queensland Government, Brisbane.